Apache warrior took revenge, only to find his mother praying in the sheriff's house. The outlaw carried his brother's boots into town, and left his soul behind in the desert. They were still warm when he found them, crusted with dried blood, caked in dust the color of old rust. Not just any boots. His brother's. The ones with the stitched star on the left toe, the one their mother had sewn after he saved her from a rattlesnake when he was 12. Now, they dangled from the warrior's belt like trophies pulled from a grave. He walked alone through the hollowed-out streets of Blackwater Gulch, where the wind didn't whistle, it moaned. Like something alive, grieving. The saloon door hung crooked, its sign missing half the letters, Salo. Inside, bottles lay shattered. A piano key stuck up from the floorboards, bent and yellowed, as if someone had tried to play one last song before the bullets came. No bodies remained. Just stains. Dark patches on the porch. A smear across the hitching post. A child's doll, face gone, lying in the dirt beside a cracked teacup. He didn't look at them. He couldn't. Not yet. His name was Tenenilii, he who walks with fire, but no one called him that anymore. Not since the raid. Not since the soldiers came with torches and orders written in ink too thick to ignore. They said he was dead. Burned with the rest. But he wasn't. He'd hidden beneath the cellar floorboards, teeth clenched so hard his jaw bled. He watched through the cracks as his father's body was dragged out, his scalp taken as proof. He saw his mother dragged by the hair, screaming his name until her voice turned to ash. And then, the fire. It rose fast. Hotter than the noon sun. Hungrier than wolves in winter. He ran for 3 days without water. Survived on roots and the memory of her voice. When he finally returned, the village was stone and smoke. Only the bones remained. And those, the ravens had already picked clean. He buried what he could. A comb. A prayer bead. His father's tobacco pouch. Then he followed the trail of cowboys who'd ridden away laughing, their horses heavy with stolen grain and silver. He found 2 of them 6 weeks later, in a mining camp outside Santa Fe. One died with a knife between his ribs. The other with his throat slit open like a slaughtered sheep. He took their boots. Their guns. Their names. And now, here he stood. In Blackwater Gulch. Where the third man lived. Sheriff Elias Crow. The one who gave the order. The one who smiled while the flames climbed the church steeple. Tenenilii didn't carry a gun in his hand. Not yet. He carried the boots. Every step echoed against the wooden sidewalks. Every creak of leather reminded him of the day his brother laughed, kicking dust into the air as they chased each other past the creek. Now, the dust was all that remained. A woman peeked from behind a shutter. An old man spat into the dirt and turned away. No one spoke. No one dared. They knew who he was. Not by face, but by silence. When a man walks into town carrying the boots of the dead, you don't ask questions. You pray he doesn't stay long. He passed the jailhouse. Its bars rusted, its cells empty except for one, a small cot, a stained pillow, a single Bible lying open to Psalm 23. Someone had been kept there. Long enough to read. Long enough to hope. He stopped at the sheriff's house. It stood apart, cleaner than the others. White paint peeling but still present. A garden, dead now, choked with thistle. A swing hanging from an oak, swaying ever so slightly, though no wind stirred. He lifted the boots. Held them to his chest. Closed his eyes. And for the first time in 2 years. He wept. Not loud. Not wild. Just silent. Tears carving paths through the grime on his cheeks. Behind the window, a candle flickered. A shadow moved. Slow. Deliberate. Someone inside knew he was there. He didn't knock. Didn't raise his rifle. Just stood. Breathing. Waiting. The boots trembled in his grip. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the house, a voice began to sing. Soft. Familiar. A lullaby. His mother's voice. Sleep, my son, the stars are watching. His breath caught. His knees buckled. The boots fell. Dust rose. And the song did not stop. She didn't hear the boots hit the ground. But she felt them. Like a drumbeat in her bones. The candle flickered as the wind slipped through the crack in the window, just enough to make the flame dance, just enough to cast shadows that looked like hands reaching from the walls. Eleanor Crow didn't turn. She never did anymore. Not since the day they brought her here, bloodied, broken, but alive, after the raid. They said she was lucky. That God had spared her for a reason. She didn't believe in luck. Or God. Not really. But she believed in bread. And so she baked. Every morning, before dawn, she rose. Kneaded flour with fingers stiff from cold and grief. Mixed it with water drawn from the well, the same well where they'd buried the children after the fire. She didn't say prayers over it. Didn't bless it. Just made it. Because when you've watched your world burn, the only thing left holy is the act of making something new from nothing. Today's loaf was small. Last week's ration had run out. The miller wouldn't sell to her anymore, not since the rumors started. Sheriff's wife. Apache sympathizer. Maybe even one of them. She didn't care. She kept baking. One loaf every 3 days. One piece saved. Always. For him. She didn't know if he lived. Didn't know if he remembered. But she remembered his hands, small, calloused from climbing rocks, stained with berry juice, always reaching for hers. She remembered how he used to press his forehead to hers before bed and whisper, "Mama, tell me the story again." So she sang. Every night. Even now. Even though no one listened. Even though the townsfolk crossed the street when she passed. Even though the sheriff, her husband, had died 2 years ago, gunned down by a drunk miner who swore she'd cursed him. She still wore his wedding ring. On her right hand. Because the left one was gone. Burned off in the fire. She'd wrapped it in cloth and buried it beneath the oak tree. Now, she knelt on the floorboards, bare knees pressed into the cold wood, the cracked loaf resting on her thighs. Her lips moved. No sound came out. Just breath. A rhythm. A prayer. Let him find peace. Let him forget. Let him live. Outside, the warrior stood frozen. His eyes burned. His throat tightened. He knew that song. He'd heard it under the stars, when the wind carried the scent of juniper and the distant cry of a coyote. He'd heard it the night before the soldiers came. He'd heard it in his dreams, every night, for 2 long years. And now. It was real. She was real. Not a ghost. Not a memory. She sat there. Old. Thin. Hair like winter snow caught in the moonlight. Skin stretched tight over cheekbones that once held laughter. And on her wrist, the scar. Same as his. A crescent moon. He'd carved it himself, at 7, with a flint knife, to prove he could protect her. She'd cried when she saw it. Then kissed it. Said, "Now we're marked together." No fire can take that. He hadn't thought about it since the flames. Until now. His hand went to his own wrist. Fingers trembling. There it was. Still there. The mark. Still whole. The bread smelled like home. Not the home he remembered. Not the one with singing birds and smoke curling from the chimney. But the home inside him. The one no fire could touch. He took a step forward. The floorboard groaned. Soft. Like a sigh. Inside, she stopped praying. Silence fell. Thick. Heavy. As if the air itself held its breath. He stepped forward. One slow step. Then another. The floorboards groaned under him, not in protest, but in recognition. Like they remembered him too. He didn't speak. Words had died with the fire. But his eyes did. They spoke everything. The night spent crawling through cactus thorns to find her scent on the wind. The winters he slept wrapped in buffalo hide, dreaming of her voice. The moments he'd raised his rifle to kill men who looked like Crow, only to lower it when he saw their children staring back at him, wide-eyed and scared. He stopped 3 paces from her. Close enough to smell the soap on her skin, lavender and lye, the same kind she used before the raid. Close enough to see the tremor in her hands. Close enough to see the scar on her wrist. The one he carved. The one he wore. She lifted her gaze then. Not to fear him. Not to curse him. But to see him. For the first time since he was a boy. Her eyes, gray as storm clouds over the mesas, filled slowly. Not with tears. Not yet. But with something worse. Recognition. And grief. Not for what he'd done. But for what had been done to him. You look so much like your father, she whispered. He swallowed. His throat cracked like dry earth. I heard you were dead. I prayed every night that you were alive. I came to kill you. I know. Silence. Longer than the desert night. Outside, the wind stirred again, just a breath, but it carried the scent of rain. Not coming. Not yet. But coming. She reached out. Not toward him. Toward the bread. Slowly. Gently. She broke off a small piece. Held it between her fingers. Then extended it. Just beyond her knee. A hand's width from his boot. You always liked it warm, she said. With a little honey. Before bed. He didn't move. Didn't take it. Didn't breathe. His fingers twitched. His chest hollowed. He wanted to scream. To throw the bread. To smash the window. To burn the house down. To make the world pay. But instead, he knelt. On the dusty floor. Before her. Not in prayer. Not in submission. But in surrender. His forehead touched the wood. His shoulders shook. And for the first time since the flames took his home, he cried. Not loud. Not wild. Just quiet. Like a river finally finding its way home. She didn't touch him. Didn't try to comfort. Didn't say, it's okay. Because nothing was okay. But she sang. Again. Soft. Fragile. The lullaby. The one he hadn't heard since the night before the fire. Sleep, my son, the stars are watching. Even when the world forgets you. I will remember. Each word fell like ash. Each note, a thread. Weaving him back together. Piece by broken piece. When the song ended, he lifted his head. Tears carved clean paths through the dust on his face. His eyes met hers. No words. Just breath. Just knowing. She moved her hand. Closer. The bread now inches from his palm. He stared at it. At her. At the ring on her right hand. At the empty space where the left should be. And then, he reached. Not for the rifle. Not for revenge. But for the bread. His fingers brushed hers. Cold. Warm. Alive. She didn't flinch. Didn't pull away. Just held still. As if she'd waited 20 years for this moment. And now, she let him take it. He pulled the bread to his chest. Broke off a tiny piece. Put it in his mouth. It tasted like childhood. Like safety. Like love. Real. Unbroken. He closed his eyes. And for the first time in 2 long years, he felt whole. Not because he'd found justice. But because he'd found mercy. And mercy was heavier than vengeance. He opened his eyes. Looked at her. And whispered, "I'm sorry." She smiled. So faint. So sad. So beautiful. "I know." Outside, the crow took flight. Not toward the horizon. But up. Into the sky. Where the stars were just beginning to blink awake. And somewhere, deep in the earth beneath them, the roots of the old oak tree curled gently around a buried wedding ring. Holding fast. Just like she had. At dawn, the sheriff's widow sat on the porch with her hands folded in her lap. The bread was gone. The candle, extinguished. The rifle, vanished. No one saw him leave. No one heard the hoofbeats. But when the first light spilled over the mesas, pale gold bleeding into the gray, the townsfolk found the front door ajar. And on the kitchen table. A bundle wrapped in buckskin. Tied with sinew. Smelling faintly of sage and smoke. Eleanor didn't rush to open it. She knew what it was. She'd been waiting for this moment since the day they took him. She untied the knot slowly. Fingers trembling, not from fear, but from reverence. Inside lay a child's toy horse. Carved from cedar. Smooth as river stone. Painted with ochre and charcoal, the colors of the earth before the settlers came. Its mane was braided with a single feather. A hawk's feather. Black at the tip. White at the base. Just like the ones he used to pluck from the cliffs when he was small. He'd brought them to her. Said, "For your hair, Mama. So you'll always fly." She traced the carving with her thumb. Her breath caught. Because beneath the horse's belly, etched so lightly only sunlight could reveal it, was his name. Tuninilii. Not as a warrior. Not as a ghost. As a boy. Still hers. Beside the toy, a single feather lay flat. And beside that, half-eaten bread. The last piece. Where his lips had touched it. She picked it up. Held it to her chest. Didn't eat it. Didn't throw it away. Just kept it. Like a relic. Like a promise. Outside, the mare stood saddled near the hitching post. Her coat gleamed dappled in the morning light. Saddlebags full. Not with gold. Not with weapons. With dried meat. Water skins. A blanket. A compass. And a small pouch of tobacco, his father's brand. She knew where he'd gone. North. To the sacred mountains. Where the spirits walked. Where the land remembered. Where no man would follow. No law could reach. No vengeance could find him. She didn't cry. Not then. She rose. Walked to the edge of the porch. Looked out across the empty road. The dust still hung low. The wind carried whispers. Of songs. Of fire. Of a mother singing to a son who never stopped listening. Behind her, the church bell began to toll. Not for mourning. Not for justice. But for release. 1 chime. 2. 3. And then, a sound. Faint. Far off. A horse whinnied. High. Clear. Then silence. She turned. Went back inside. Sat at the table. Picked up the carved horse. Kissed its forehead. Then placed it gently beside the Bible. On Psalm 23. Yeah, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, she whispered the words aloud. Soft. As if he could hear. And then, she hummed. Just a note. The lullaby. The same one she sang every night. The one he'd carried in his bones. Outside, the crow returned. Perched on the fence post. Watched. Waited. As if guarding something too holy to name. That afternoon, a traveler passed through Blackwater Gulch. Asked about the widow. Said he'd seen a lone rider heading north. Tall. Lean. Wearing no badge. No coat. Just a rifle slung across his back. And a feather tied to his hat. The man nodded. Said, he didn't look like a killer. No, the widow replied, stirring her tea. He looked like a son coming home. The traveler lingered. Looked toward the horizon. Then asked, do you think he'll come back? She smiled. A quiet thing. Like moonlight on snow. I don't know. But I'll keep baking. And singing. And leaving the door open. The traveler left. The wind rose. Dust swirled. And somewhere, miles beyond the ridge, a rider lifted his face to the sun. His skin burned. His lips cracked. His heart, lighter than it had been in 20 years. He didn't carry revenge anymore. He carried memory. He didn't ride to kill. He rode to remember. To breathe. To be. He reached into his pocket. Found the last bite of bread. Held it between his fingers. Closed his eyes. And whispered, Mama. The wind answered. Not with words. But with song. Faint. Far. Familiar. And for the first time, he let himself believe, that maybe, just maybe, some things are worth more than blood. Some silences are sacred. And some mothers never stop loving their sons. Even when the world says they should. Even when the son thinks he doesn't deserve it. Even when the world burns. Even when the stars go dark. She still sings. And he still listens. And that is how the West remembers its ghosts. Not with bullets. But with bread. With feathers. With lullabies. With doors left open. And hearts that refuse to close.